My name is Jenny, and I am 52 years old. As I sit here in this pristine Mercedes-Benz showroom in Scottsdale, Arizona, signing the final paperwork for my brand new GLE 450, I can see my daughter Madison through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She is standing frozen on the sidewalk, her mouth agape, watching me hand over a cashier's check for $65,000. 6 months ago, this very same daughter threw me out of her house, calling me a financial burden and telling me I was too poor to be part of her life. She believed I was broke, living in denial about my situation. What she never knew was that I had been testing her all along. Before I share this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family betrayal and unexpected revelations. You won't believe how this mother-daughter relationship completely transformed in the span of a single afternoon, when the truth about money finally came to light. Let me take you back to the beginning, when life was simpler and my relationship with Madison was built on genuine love rather than financial assumptions. I had always been a practical woman, working as a registered nurse at Phoenix General Hospital for over 20 years. It was there that I met my husband, Robert, a civil engineer who specialized in commercial construction projects throughout Arizona. We married in 1993, and 2 years later, our beautiful daughter Madison came into the world. Those early years were filled with Sunday morning pancakes, family camping trips to Sedona, and homework sessions at our kitchen table. Robert would come home dusty from construction sites, but his eyes would light up whenever Madison ran to greet him. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in central Phoenix. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I remember teaching Madison to ride her bike in our driveway, watching her graduate high school as valedictorian, and crying with pride when she earned a full scholarship to Arizona State University for accounting. Everything changed in October of 2018 when I received the phone call that shattered our world. Robert had been driving home from a job site in Tucson when an 18-wheeler ran a red light and slammed into his pickup truck. He died instantly, leaving me a widow at 47 and Madison fatherless at 23. The grief was overwhelming, like a physical weight crushing my chest every morning when I woke up and remembered he was never coming home again. Madison was incredible during those dark months. She drove down from Tempe every weekend, bringing groceries and sitting with me when the silence became unbearable. She helped me arrange the funeral deal with insurance companies and navigate the maze of paperwork that follows death. For a while, it felt like tragedy had actually brought us closer together. She would call me every evening, checking on me, making sure I was eating and sleeping. I thought our bond was unbreakable. I took a leave of absence from the hospital, unable to focus on caring for patients when I could barely care for myself. The house felt enormous and empty without Robert's presence filling it. Madison encouraged me to return to work when I was ready, saying it would help me heal. By spring of 2019, I was back to working part-time shifts, grateful for the distraction and the familiar routine of helping others. Madison graduated with honors and landed a position at a prestigious financial planning firm in Phoenix. I was so proud watching her build her career, seeing her confidence grow as she helped clients manage their investments and plan for retirement. She moved into a nice apartment near her office and began dating Tyler, a marketing executive she met through mutual friends. Everything seemed to be falling into place for both of us. But something shifted when Madison and Tyler got engaged in late 2021. Suddenly, conversations that used to focus on family memories and future dreams began revolving around financial security and wealth building. Madison would visit and comment on my older appliances, my modest car, my simple lifestyle. She began asking pointed questions about my retirement savings and expressing concern about my financial future in ways that felt more judgmental than caring. The first real crack in our relationship appeared during the spring of 2022, about 6 months before Madison's wedding. She had always been direct, a trait I admired, but her words began carrying a sharp edge that cut deeper than I expected. During one of her weekend visits, she looked around my living room and sighed heavily. "Mom, you really need to think about your retirement," she said, settling into Robert's old recliner with a frown. "I mean, how long can you keep working these part-time shifts? Your knees are already bothering you, and you're not getting any younger. I can't support you forever when you get older." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. Support me? I had never asked her for a single dollar, never even hinted that I expected financial help. I worked my shifts, paid my bills, and lived within my means just as I always had. Where was this coming from? "Madison, honey, I don't need your support," I said carefully, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "I'm managing just fine on my own." She rolled her eyes in that way that reminded me of her teenage years, but without the playful affection. "Mom, living paycheck to paycheck is not managing fine. You need to face reality about your situation." The conversation left me feeling confused and wounded. I began questioning myself, wondering if I had somehow given her the impression that I was struggling financially. I examined my bank statements, my modest spending habits, my simple lifestyle choices. Nothing had changed dramatically since Robert's death. So why was Madison suddenly treating me like a charity case? Things got worse during the holidays. Madison and Tyler had purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Scottsdale, complete with granite countertops, a 3-car garage, and a swimming pool with mountain views. When Thanksgiving approached, I naturally assumed I would be invited to their first holiday in their new home. Instead, Madison called 3 days before the holiday. "Mom, Tyler's parents are already coming for Thanksgiving, and the house just isn't big enough for everyone," she explained in a tone that suggested the matter was settled. "Maybe we can do something the weekend after, just the 3 of us." I spent Thanksgiving alone for the first time since Robert's death, eating a turkey sandwich while watching football games he used to love. The weekend dinner she promised never materialized. When I called to suggest alternative dates, Madison was always busy with work obligations, house projects, or social commitments with Tyler's family. Our weekly phone calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When we did talk, Madison seemed distracted, often cutting conversations short because she needed to focus on career advancement or building wealth for the future. She spoke about her financial goals, her investment portfolio, and her 5-year plan with the passion she used to reserve for our family stories. I felt like I was watching my daughter disappear into a world where money mattered more than the people who loved her unconditionally. The young woman who had held my hand during Robert's funeral was being replaced by someone who measured relationships by their potential return on investment. The real crisis began in March of 2023 during what would become our last normal visit. Madison arrived at my house on a Saturday afternoon, but instead of the casual mother-daughter chat I was hoping for, she came armed with printed articles about senior living communities and financial planning for limited-income retirees. She spread the papers across my kitchen table like evidence in a court case. "Mom, we need to have a serious conversation about your living situation," she announced, her tone clinical and detached. "This house is way too big for one person, and you're wasting money on utilities maintenance and property taxes. You need to downsize to something more appropriate for your income level." I stared at the glossy brochures featuring smiling elderly people playing bingo and doing water aerobics. "Madison, this is my home. Your father and I built our life here. You grew up in this house." "Exactly," she replied, as if I had just proven her point. "It's full of memories, but memories don't pay the bills. You're being financially irresponsible by staying here when you could sell it and move somewhere affordable. You need to be realistic about your situation." Tyler, who had been quietly scrolling through his phone on my couch, looked up and nodded supportively. "Older people need to accept their limitations, too. he added with the confidence of someone who had never experienced real loss. It's better to make smart decisions now than to end up broke later. Their words felt like physical blows. Broke, limited. When had I become this pathetic figure in their minds? I tried to explain that I was comfortable that my bills were paid, that I wasn't asking them for anything. But Madison waved away my protests. Mom, I see your old car, your outdated clothes, the way you clip coupons and shop sales. You don't have to pretend with us. We know you're struggling. After they left that day, I sat in my kitchen and cried until my chest ached. How had my frugal lifestyle, my preference for practical choices over flashy purchases, been interpreted as poverty? When had my daughter learned to equate someone's worth with their willingness to spend money on status symbols? The breaking point came 2 weeks later when I accidentally overheard a phone conversation that shattered what remained of my heart. Madison was in my backyard, pacing near the rose garden Robert had planted for me, talking loudly on her cell phone while I prepared iced tea in the kitchen. I don't know what to do about my mom, she was saying to whoever was on the other end. She's becoming such a burden. She acts like she has money, but she's just living in denial about being poor. She won't listen to reason about downsizing or being practical. I'm honestly thinking about having to put her in assisted living soon because she can't take care of herself financially. I dropped the glass pitcher I was holding, watching it shatter across my tile floor, just like my relationship with my daughter. She was talking about me like I was a problem to be solved, an embarrassment to be managed. The woman I had raised, loved, and supported through every challenge of her life was discussing putting me away like I was some confused elderly person who had lost touch with reality. That night, I made a decision that would change everything between us. June 15th, 2023 started as an ordinary Thursday, but it became the day that ended the relationship I thought would last forever. I had spent 3 weeks gathering my courage, knowing that Madison and Tyler needed to hear the truth about how they had been treating me. I drove to their beautiful Scottsdale home, hoping that somehow we could bridge the gap that had grown between us. Madison answered the door wearing workout clothes and a distracted expression. Mom, this isn't a great time. Tyler and I have plans tonight. This will just take a few minutes, I said, holding up a small photo album I had brought. I wanted to show you some pictures I found of us from when you were little. I thought maybe we could talk about what's been happening between us. What I walked into was not a conversation but an ambush. Madison and Tyler had clearly been planning this intervention for days. The coffee table was covered with pamphlets for senior living facilities, budget planning worksheets, and printed articles about financial assistance programs for low-income elderly. They had prepared a presentation about my future like I was a business problem requiring a strategic solution. Mom, sit down, Madison said, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she probably used with difficult clients at work. Tyler and I have been doing research, and we found some really good options for you. For the next 30 minutes, they laid out their plan for my life. I would sell my house and move into Pine Valley Senior Community, where rent would be based on my limited income. I would trade my car for something more economical, maybe take public transportation. I would apply for senior discounts, food assistance, and Medicare supplements to help stretch my obviously inadequate savings. We're not trying to hurt your feelings, Tyler explained with practiced patience. We're trying to help you accept reality so you can plan accordingly. What reality? I finally interrupted. What makes you think I can't afford my life? Madison's face reddened with frustration. Mom, stop it. Just stop pretending. We can see how you live. We know you don't have money. Your house needs repairs. Your car is 10 years old. You shop at thrift stores. You're poor, and that's okay, but you need to accept it instead of living this fantasy. When I tried to speak to explain that I shopped carefully by choice, that I preferred older, reliable cars, that my house was maintained exactly as I wanted it, Madison held up her hand like she was stopping traffic. I don't want to hear your excuses anymore, she said, her voice cold and final. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. You're embarrassing yourself and making me worry constantly about your future. Tyler and I have our own lives to build. We can't keep being responsible for your poor decisions." Tyler stood up and walked toward the front door, opening it wide. "I think it's time for you to leave and really think about what we've discussed. Don't come back until you're ready to be honest about your situation and accept our help." Madison turned her back to me, staring out the window at their pool and perfectly manicured backyard. "I love you, Mom, but I can't enable your denial anymore. When you're ready to face the truth about being poor, we'll be here to help you transition to a more realistic lifestyle." I walked out of their house carrying the photo album I had never gotten to show them, feeling like the world had tilted off its axis. My daughter, the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, had just thrown me away because she believed I was too poor to deserve her love and respect. What Madison never knew, what she had never bothered to ask about, was the real state of my finances after Robert's death. Her assumptions about my poverty were so far from the truth that if the situation hadn't been so heartbreaking, it might have been laughable. She saw my modest lifestyle and concluded I was broke. The reality was exactly the opposite. When Robert died, I received $800,000 from his life insurance policy. It was a substantial amount that he had maintained for years to ensure I would be financially secure if anything happened to him. But that wasn't all. Robert's final construction project, a luxury apartment complex in Scottsdale, was completed 6 months after his death. When his business partner bought out Robert's share of the company, I received an additional $300,000. Suddenly, at 47 years old, I found myself with $1.1 million in assets. I could have quit working entirely, bought a mansion, traveled the world, or lived like a wealthy widow. Instead, I made a conscious decision to invest the money wisely and continue living modestly, while I figured out how to honor Robert's memory and build a meaningful life without him. I worked with a financial advisor who helped me create a diversified portfolio of conservative investments. The money was growing steadily, generating enough passive income that I could have stopped working anytime I chose. I kept my part-time nursing job because I loved helping people and needed the sense of purpose it provided during my grief recovery. But here's the part that Madison never understood. I deliberately chose to maintain the same simple lifestyle Robert and I had always enjoyed. I drove older cars because they were reliable and paid for. I shopped sales and used coupons because it was good stewardship of resources. I kept our modest home because it held 30 years of beautiful memories and felt like a sanctuary where Robert's presence still lingered. Madison interpreted my choices as signs of financial desperation, never once asking direct questions about my actual situation. She saw what she expected to see: a poor widow struggling to survive on limited resources. The irony was devastating. My daughter, who worked in financial planning and prided herself on understanding money, had completely misread her own mother's financial position. For 5 years after Robert's death, I had been testing something without even realizing it. I wanted to see if Madison would love and respect me when she believed I had nothing to offer her financially. Would she value our relationship for its own sake? Or was her affection conditional on my ability to contribute to her material success? The answer broke my heart, but it also clarified everything. Madison had failed the test spectacularly. When she believed I was poor, she didn't offer love and support. She offered judgment, embarrassment, and ultimately rejection. She didn't want to care for her struggling mother. She wanted to dispose of her inconvenient one. After 6 months of silence following that terrible day in June, I decided Madison needed to learn a lesson about assumptions, love, and the true nature of family relationships. I would give her a shock that would force her to confront her own values and priorities. I would buy something she had always wanted, but could never afford, something that would make my financial reality impossible to ignore. Madison had been obsessing over a white pearl Mercedes-Benz GLE 450 for over a year. Every time we drove past the dealership in Scottsdale, she would point it out, talking about how someday when she got promoted or Tyler's business took off, maybe they could afford the $65,000 price tag. It had become a symbol of the financial success she was desperately chasing. That car was going to become my statement, my response to being discarded for being too poor. She would see exactly how poor her mother really was. Saturday, December the 16th, 2023, dawned crisp and clear in Phoenix, the kind of perfect winter morning that reminds you why people move to Arizona. I dressed in my usual style, a soft gray cardigan that was 5 years old, but still comfortable, dark blue jeans that had seen countless wash cycles, and my practical walking shoes. To anyone looking at me, I appeared exactly as Madison had described an older woman of modest means, unremarkable and financially insignificant. I drove my 10-year-old Honda Civic to Mercedes-Benz of Scottsdale, parking between a gleaming Porsche and a massive BMW SUV. The contrast was not lost on me. I looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong neighborhood, which was precisely the point of this entire exercise. Inside the showroom, the salespeople initially paid me little attention. I wandered around admiring cars that cost more than many people's annual salaries, taking my time to examine the features and craftsmanship. Finally, a young salesman named David approached me with professional courtesy but obvious skepticism. "Good morning, ma'am. Is there something specific you're looking for today?" "Yes," I replied with a warm smile. "I'd like to see the GLE 450 in white pearl, please. The one in your front window." His eyebrows rose slightly, but his training kicked in. "Of course. Let me get the keys and we can take a look." For the next hour, David walked me through every feature of the vehicle. I asked detailed questions about the engine, the safety features, the warranty coverage, and the available options. I listened carefully, nodding and taking notes, like any serious buyer would. Gradually, his skepticism faded as he realized I was genuinely interested and surprisingly knowledgeable about luxury vehicles. "Would you like to take a test drive?" he asked. "That won't be necessary," I replied calmly. "I've done my research. I know what I want. Let's discuss the final price." David looked uncertain. "Well, the MSRP on this model is $64,999 plus taxes and fees. We currently have a promotion that includes—" "I'll pay full price," I interrupted. "Cash." The silence that followed was almost comical. David stared at me like I had just announced I was from Mars. "Cash? You mean financing through your bank?" "No, I mean cash. A cashier's check for the full amount. When can we complete the paperwork?" David excused himself to speak with his manager, leaving me alone in the showroom to appreciate the irony of the situation. Here I was, the poor mother who had been rejected by her own daughter, about to make a purchase that would take most people years to save for. That's when I saw them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Madison and Tyler were walking across the parking lot, heading directly toward the showroom entrance. Madison was wearing a navy blue dress and heels, clearly coming from some professional function. Tyler was in khakis and a polo shirt, looking relaxed and confident. They had no idea that their financially irresponsible mother was inside, about to prove just how wrong their assumptions had been. I watched them enter and immediately gravitate toward the certified pre-owned section, where a 3-year-old C-Class sedan was displayed with a price tag of $38,000. Even that more modest luxury car was beyond their current budget, but they could dream. David returned with his manager, a distinguished man in his 50s, who introduced himself as Michael. "Mrs. Patterson, David tells me you're interested in purchasing the GLE 450 today. May I ask how you'll be financing this?" I opened my purse and pulled out the cashier's check I had obtained that morning from my bank. $112,000 enough to cover the car taxes, extended warranty, and any additional fees. Michael's eyes widened as he examined the check, then looked at me with new respect, and perhaps a touch of confusion. "This is quite unusual," he admitted. "Most customers prefer to finance even when they have the means to pay cash. Are you sure this is how you'd prefer to structure the purchase?" "I'm very sure," I replied. "I believe in paying for what I want when I want it. Life is too short to make payments on things you can afford to own outright." As we moved to the financing office to complete the paperwork, I could see Madison and Tyler through the office windows. Madison was sitting in the driver's seat of the C-Class, running her hands over the leather steering wheel with the expression of someone imagining a life she couldn't quite afford. Tyler was taking photos of the window sticker, probably calculating monthly payments and interest rates. I signed document after document, transferred the title arranged for insurance, and completed every detail of the purchase. The whole process took about 90 minutes, during which Madison and Tyler continued exploring the showroom, unaware that they were about to receive the shock of their lives. Finally, Michael handed me the keys to my new car. "Congratulations, Mrs. Patterson. Would you like us to deliver the vehicle, or will you be driving it home today?" "I'll drive it home," I said, standing up and smoothing my old cardigan. "But first, I think I'll say hello to some people I recognize." The moment I stepped out of the financing office, holding the keys to my brand new Mercedes-Benz Madison, looked up from the C-Class she had been admiring. For a few seconds, her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Her mother, the woman she had labeled as poor and financially irresponsible, was walking through a luxury car dealership like she belonged there. "Mom," Madison's voice carried across the showroom confusion and disbelief, evident in every syllable. "What are you doing here?" Tyler looked up from the pricing information he had been studying, his expression shifting from casual interest to complete bewilderment. They both stood there frozen as I approached them with the same calm demeanor I had maintained throughout this entire ordeal. "Hello, Madison, Tyler." I held up the keys, letting them catch the light from the showroom's elegant fixtures. "I'm just picking up my new car, the GLE 450 you've been admiring for the past year, the white pearl one." Madison's face went through several color changes from pale to flushed to pale again. "Your new car, Mom. How can you possibly afford this? This car costs $65,000. $64,999, actually," I corrected gently. "Plus taxes and fees. I paid $112,000 total." The silence that followed was deafening. Other customers in the showroom had begun to notice our conversation, sensing the drama unfolding between the elegantly dressed young woman and the modestly dressed older woman holding luxury car keys. Tyler was the first to find his voice. "Mrs. Patterson, I don't understand. Where did you get this kind of money? Did you take out some kind of loan? Because if you did, that's exactly the kind of financial irresponsibility we were trying to help you avoid." I almost laughed at his assumption that I must have done something foolish or desperate. Even now, faced with evidence that contradicted everything they believed about me, they were looking for ways to maintain their narrative about my supposed poverty. "No loan, Tyler. I paid cash. The same way I've been paying for everything else for the past 5 years. The same way I've been affording my house, my bills, and my comfortable life, while you two have been planning my move to assisted living." Madison's hands were shaking now. "But Mom, you don't have money. We've seen how you live. You shop at thrift stores. You clip coupons. You drive that old Honda. You're poor." "No, Madison," I replied, my voice carrying 5 years of hurt and disappointment. "I'm frugal. There's a difference, though you've apparently never learned it. I shop carefully because it's good stewardship. I drive older cars because they're reliable and paid for. I live modestly because your father and I always believed that having money and flaunting money were two entirely different things." The truth was pouring out now, and I couldn't stop it if I wanted to. When your father died, I received $800,000 in life insurance, plus another $300,000 from the sale of his business interests. I've been investing that money carefully for 5 years. I could have quit working, bought a mansion, traveled the world. Instead, I chose to live the same simple life we always enjoyed while testing something I never hoped I'd have to test. Madison's legs seemed to give out slightly, and she sank into one of the leather chairs in the customer lounge area. Testing what? Testing whether my daughter would love me when she thought I had nothing to offer her financially. Testing whether you'd stand by me if you believed I was poor and struggling. Testing whether your love was conditional on my ability to contribute to your material success. I looked around the showroom at the expensive cars, the well-dressed salespeople, the atmosphere of wealth and luxury. You failed that test completely, Madison. When you thought I was poor, you didn't offer love and support. You offered judgment and abandonment. You threw me out of your life because you were embarrassed by what you thought was my financial situation. Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Other customers were pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. Madison was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, as the full impact of her mistake became clear. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't know. I was trying to help." "Help?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "You wanted to put me in assisted living, Madison. You wanted to sell my home control, my finances, manage my life like I was some confused elderly person who couldn't be trusted with decisions. That's not help. That's taking control of someone you've decided is too incompetent to care for themselves." I walked toward the exit, my new car keys feeling heavy in my hand. "Love shouldn't be conditional on wealth, Madison. I raised you to be better than that. I thought I had taught you that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or their willingness to spend money on status symbols." Madison jumped up and followed me, her heels clicking frantically across the marble floor. "Please, Mom, please don't leave like this. I know I made a terrible mistake. I know I hurt you, but please give me a chance to make this right." I stopped at the door and turned to face her one last time in that moment. Money reveals character, Madison. It doesn't create it. Today you learned something about your own character that I hope you'll think about very carefully. I also hope someday you'll understand that the greatest gift I could give you was showing you who you really are when you think someone can't do anything for you financially. As I walked toward my new Mercedes-Benz gleaming white in the Arizona sunshine, I could hear Madison crying behind me. Tyler was trying to comfort her, but there really wasn't anything he could say to fix what had been broken that day. I had made my statement. The question now was whether my daughter would learn from it. The months that followed were some of the most difficult of my life, even worse than the grief I had experienced after Robert's death. At least then I had Madison's love and support to help me through the darkness. Now I was dealing with the loss of my daughter by her own choice, and the pain was almost unbearable. Madison called constantly for the first few weeks, leaving tearful voicemails, apologizing for her behavior, and begging me to forgive her. I listened to every message but wasn't ready to respond. Her words of regret, while clearly sincere, couldn't undo years of judgment, condescension, and ultimately abandonment. She had revealed something fundamental about her character that couldn't be fixed with simple apologies. Tyler sent me a formal letter, typewritten and carefully worded, acknowledging that they had misunderstood my financial situation and expressing hope that we could move forward positively. His clinical approach to what should have been a deeply personal family crisis told me everything I needed to know about his influence on Madison's values. By February, Madison had shifted tactics. Instead of apologies, she began sending gifts, expensive flower arrangements, gourmet food baskets, jewelry I would never wear. Each delivery came with cards expressing love and regret, but also demonstrated that she still didn't understand the fundamental problem. She was trying to buy forgiveness the same way she had measured my worth by money. The turning point came in April, when Madison showed up at my house unannounced, not with gifts or grand gestures, but with a simple handwritten letter and red eyes that suggested she had been crying for hours. She looked younger, somehow more like the daughter I remembered from before marriage and financial success had changed her perspective. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to see me," she said when I opened the door, "but I need you to know that I understand now what I did wrong. It wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. It was about love. It was about everything I was raised to value. And I threw it all away because I got caught up in appearances and status." I invited her in, and we sat in the living room where we used to watch movies together, where she used to tell me about her school day, where Robert used to read her bedtime stories. The space felt charged with memories of better times. "I've been going to counseling," she continued, her voice shaky but determined. "I needed to understand how I became someone who would treat their own mother the way I treated you. I needed to figure out how I lost sight of what really matters." For the first time in months, I heard the daughter I had raised speaking instead of the status-conscious woman she had become. We talked for 3 hours that day, and Madison didn't make excuses for her behavior. She didn't blame Tyler or work stress or financial pressure. She took full responsibility for her choices and their consequences. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said, as she prepared to leave. "I know trust has to be rebuilt through actions, not words. But I want you to know that I'm committed to becoming the daughter you deserved all along, the one you thought you had raised." Our reconciliation has been slow and careful, built on new foundations of mutual respect, rather than assumptions and expectations. Madison had to learn that love isn't about financial status or lifestyle choices. I had to learn that testing someone's character, while necessary, comes with real risks and consequences. Today, our relationship is different than it was before, but in many ways it's stronger. Madison understands now that my modest lifestyle was a choice, not a limitation. She's learned to value authenticity over appearances, relationships, over acquisitions. She's becoming the woman I always hoped she would be, just by a more difficult path than either of us expected. As for my Mercedes-Benz, I drive it every day and love every mile, not because it's expensive or impressive, but because it represents something important the moment I stopped allowing others to define my worth based on their limited understanding of my situation. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach us the most valuable truths about ourselves and the people we love. Money may reveal character, but love, real unconditional love, builds it. And maybe, just maybe, this expensive lesson was worth every penny I paid for it and every moment of pain it caused. Because now I have my daughter back, not the version who measured love by dollars, but the one who understands that family means standing by each other regardless of circumstances. Have you ever had someone in your life completely misjudge your situation based on appearances? How did you handle it when family members made assumptions about your choices or your capabilities? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your stories about overcoming judgment and rebuilding trust. If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own family relationships, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about resilience, forgiveness, and the complicated nature of love. Don't forget to share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's opinions or assumptions. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the people who know us best can still see us the least clearly. Keep being true to yourself, regardless of what others think they know about your situation. Until next time, may your family relationships be built on love and understanding, rather than assumptions and judgment.